All right, welcome everybody to another FacilitiesNet Take 5 podcast. I'm Todd Fabus, and joining me today is Romany Samhaxen, the president of Koala Care. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for carving out time. I'm always appreciative of people willing to join because I know everybody's busy. So without further ado, I had jotted down some stuff that I thought would be fun to talk about, interesting to the facilities and building ownership crowd. So with that, most people would know Koala's brand is pretty much synonymous with baby changing stations, right? Take it
Yep.
from me, I have two kids. So
Same here.
can you just kind of go over like the little bit of the history of Koala and baby changing stations and it's something you kind of take for granted now, but probably not so much a couple decades ago.
Sure thing. Yeah. It's actually pretty interesting. I was asked by an architect just last month at an event, and I didn't actually know the story. I've been with the Bobrick washroom equipment company for 20 years now, and Bobrick acquired Koala Care in 2004. So it's been about 22 years since it's been part of the company. But prior to that, it was actually a company called JBJ Industries. And so I had to kind of go back into the history, not history books, but because I actually talked to some people that were in the business prior to the acquisition that I kept in touch with. And, I got the lowdown, I got the origin story. So I'll share it here.
Yeah.
But basically, it was four friends, business partners that were out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and the company was called JBJ Industries. They were at their local restaurant, watering hole, whatever, in the winter in St. Paul, and they were sitting next to a family with a baby, and so they got their food. This is how the story goes. They got their
Yeah.
food, burger, fries, whatever, had some beers, and the mom basically takes the baby that was there and puts the baby on the table, starts changing the baby, dirty diaper, right? So the guys are looking at him like, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
she looks at them and says, what would you have me do? It's 20 degrees outside. It's
Yeah. Right.
in the winter. What else am I going to do? And this, you got to think back. This is probably, I think, I want to say it was in the 80s when this happened, like
Okay.
87 or something like
Okay.
that, before this company started. And so they didn't have baby changing stations, and that's what sparked the thought. The four business partners, I think, as the legend goes, one of them was a kind of designer, product designer. One was a woodworker, and I think one worked at General Mills as
Okay.
a illustrator.
Yeah.
And his daughter's favorite animal, guess what? Was a koala.
Well, well,
So
there you go.
that's kind of how it started. And then JBJ Industries later on became Koala Corp, and then Koala Care, and then
Yeah.
Bobrick acquired them later on in the early 2000s.
Good
So
time to
yeah,
so remember that. So remember that everybody. Next time you're enjoying your burger, you have, you
yeah,
know.
you don't have to see
Yeah, that's
that
because that'd be a great way to ruin a meal real quick, right? Like
for
so.
sure, for sure.
You had mentioned, so that's a great story. You'd mentioned, I think it's going to, for everybody listening, your website is koalacare.com. Care is with a K. So continuing on, like, I mean, you kind of, you touched on it, but like how things have changed over the years when it comes to baby changing stations and I mean, I don't know, like expectations, I would say even because like
Yeah,
again, I said, I mean, my kids are off the baby stations now, but like there's still some places like you go in, there'd still just be some in only like the women's room and not men's. So,
yeah.
but I'm just kind of curious, like how things change over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely gone through sort of few transitions. So one is the story I just described. It wasn't common at all. Obviously, it is now. There's been some legislation that's helping this. In fact, Denver actually recently put in a bill that got passed for certain kind of public spaces to have these changing stations. So that's kind of why when you think about it, for how long it's been around that Denver, and this is like we make our products in the Denver area. So
Okay.
most people don't know that we're in
Okay.
Colorado. Um, it's taken that long for that to actually, take hold. But what's really driven it, I think, the adoption is not the legislation. It's actually been the expectations, to your point. Like those expectations have changed as roles have changed. You have, two parent families. So, it's no longer, leave the kids at home kind of thing. Like families go up, want to be out and about, and they want to be able to spend time. And whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a theme park, whether it's entertainment center, Top Golf, for example, where we have our changing stations, like things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, Expectations are that we have those accommodations for the family, not just the babies, but toddlers and high chairs, which we also have. And then you also get into what you mentioned. It's not just in the women's rooms; it's in the men's rooms. Like
Right.
I don't know about you, but with my two kids growing up, unfortunately, they're out of that age now. They're
Yeah.
pretty much teenagers now. Um, but I changed plenty of diapers. So, I could do it in my sleep.
Right.
So
It's like breathing when
whether
you
it
have kids
was,
in
yeah,
diapers.
whether you're out and about or on an airplane or whatever the case may be, we went through that. So, and that certainly has, there was a whole movement a few years ago. I think Ashton Kutcher actually was part of it, and it's all over social media. That it was great for us because it really spread the word like, hey,
Sure.
baby changing stations should be in men's restrooms too. And so,
Yeah.
that certainly has changed. And I think overall, I think just in terms of when people think about, places they want to go to, there's an expectation there to have those accommodations. Whereas I think in the past, maybe it was more of a surprise. I think, especially when you think about families, like, they're expecting these things. And from facility management perspective, which, is your audience, is really,
Yeah.
how do we think about those things and make sure we incorporate that into the design, into the accommodations of our establishments, because that's really going to allow people to enjoy the spaces, right, and stay longer and get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the financial component. They spend more money as well when they're doing that, and they're happy. They're more likely to return. So that's really the value proposition at the end of the day. It's the restroom is the last impression, before people leave, or if that's the first place they go when they get somewhere, like they might turn around and just head back out if it doesn't, have
I
what they
mean,
want.
you're really on point because like again, we're both saying how it sounds like your kids are older than mine, but like when we would take like a road trip up to our like, a cottage we have in up north, we're in Wisconsin, and it's like when our kids were
Okay.
in diapers, I mean, that's where we would stop was the bathroom was like the gas stations that you knew had changing stations readily
Absolutely.
available. That's where we'd stop because some you'd stop at and like you're just like they don't have one.
For
So you're
sure.
totally
And
right.
and yeah, absolutely. And you look at a big thing going on today, Bucky's, which is like,
Yeah,
the travel stops. Guess
yeah,
what? They have our stainless steel baby changing stations in those
yeah,
travel stops, and they're known for the best restrooms. So it's pretty cool that that they decided to put Koala Care in the restrooms.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That kind of leads into the another one of like just I guess general beyond beyond just like the changing station itself. There's a hygiene element because like you were kind of touching on it. You're often in if it's a restaurant, and for everybody listening that doesn't have kids. The second your food comes at a restaurant is when your kid's going to need a diaper change, right? That's just in the
Yep.
league rules. That's but like
The
so
worst
obviously
possible
hygiene.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, right. It's in the league rules. But like, how does like there's the hygiene element. Like hygiene's obviously important to our listeners with as it relates to facilities management and whatnot. So like, and you even had kind of mentioned some of the other products, so that kind of caught my attention. Like you
Yeah.
said, you make other products for children and families. So, I don't know, just talk a little bit about that, about how, what Koala is doing to, I guess, encourage hygiene by way of your products or those other products that can be helpful to those in facilities.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll start with by saying Koala Care and Bobrick, the parent company of Koala Care. I mean, hygiene's one of our what we call a portfolio values. So,
Yeah,
something that's very important to the company. Bobrick washroom equipment, in fact, is basically invented the soap dispenser, right? So you think about
yeah,
that, and just its impact on hygiene and public restrooms and everyone's lives. So ultimately, hygiene starts with making our products easy to clean, right? So if they're easy to clean,
Yeah.
it's more likely they'll be maintained. The facilities, or it's easier for them to clean it, take care of it. It looks clean to the patrons. So everything kind of starts with that. The other thing that most folks may not know is we have in our baby changing stations and our seating products, a lot of our seating products is built-in microban. And microban's
Okay.
actually a proprietary product protection, which basically inhibits the growth of stain and odor-causing bacteria. And the neat thing about it is it's not a spray-on type product. It's inherent in the product. And so in the production process for the plastic, it's actually part of everything that goes into making the plastic. And then the other thing is, in all of our standard baby changing stations, we have, I don't know if most people have seen it. When you open the baby change station and lay it down flat, there's a dispenser. So you could put liners on both sides. We also have the option to put a liner
Yeah.
and what's called a diaper pouch, which is basically like a bag for you to throw the diaper in when you're done and toss it in the trash, right? Instead of just tossing the diaper straight into the trash and
Throwing it
letting
across
everyone
the
else
bathroom.
experience
Yeah.
it, right? So those are just some thoughtful things that just help with, both from an odor standpoint, hygiene. I think ultimately it just comes down to the simple philosophy that, if it's easier to maintain, it's more likely to stay clean. And that's what everyone wants at the end of the day.
Yeah. Beyond baby changing, I understand Koala's recently added some adult changing stations to your offering. Is there like legislatively anything going with that, or like how would just those products quite, it's obviously very different than babies changing stations. So like just what's going on with those? Is there kind of anything like drastically different or legislative stuff you guys are working on with anything, or just kind of give us a lowdown on those?
Yeah, so it's actually very interesting. It's in many ways kind of mirrors where baby changing stations were back 30, 40 years ago, right? Where
Sure.
new idea, you don't really see it anywhere. And eventually there's expectations around having more of these accommodations. So let me just describe what it is first. So when we say adult changing station or universal changing station, as it's also known,
Sure.
it's really for you know it's really for the changing needs for those that are no longer babies. So most baby change stations, they hold up to 50 pounds. Ours are tested for much higher than that,
Yeah.
200 even. But you know obviously the size of the bed is only so large. So when you
Right.
get into
Right.
what if we have I think one fact out there is that millions of adults now have disabilities or complex medical needs, wheelchair bound,
Sure.
and they need assistance from a caregiver, whether they're parent or say
Yeah.
someone out of school. And so what do you do there? Like, it's not at that point, it's not a baby change station. It's, a changing station for someone that's a teen, someone that's for an older child, or even someone that's elderly and unable to kind of move and walk around on their own. And I think a lot of people can relate. They probably know someone that
Sure.
is wheelchair bound or not able to care for themselves. So that's what it is. And so what we've seen now, and we launched our product about I want to say about 5 years ago, and it's really taken off. And so we call it the adult changing stations, but this provides families basically with a safe, dignified place for their loved ones to so they could fully participate in everyday lives. Like
Yeah.
before they had these, like what would they do, right? Like, so if you're well off, you might have a large sprinter van kind of thing and with all your stuff in there, but most people don't have that. So what
Right.
what it would do is they just have to make the decision, like, I'm going to cut our time short. We can't stay here as long as we wanted to stay, and because we need to get back home, or we need to change this person. There's no place to do it here, or even worse, like we just have to do it on the floor or something like that, where like
Yeah.
it's just not,
Yeah.
it's not meant for that. It's not clean. It's not safe for the caregiver either. It's just imagine the lifting, because these changing stations that I'm talking about that we have are motorized, but push button operated. It can
Oh,
raise up and
nice.
down,
Nice.
which from both from the person that's being cared for and the caregiver, that's really important when you think about it. So, I'm very proud of the fact that we have this product that's definitely gaining momentum. You spoke about legislation, that's definitely happening.
Yeah.
Um, it's getting into the building codes, which I think really drives what buildings need. And we've seen it with a lot of the airport kind of modernization work that's happened out there from the
Yeah.
federal funding. So the FAA, the Reauthorization Act, that's really resulted in a lot of airports going under significant renovations and then having to have these adult changing restrooms available because yeah, that's the thing when you think about it, right? Like they're out in an airport, they're traveling, they're there for a few
Yeah.
hours. What are
Yeah.
they going to do?
Yeah.
So
They're
that's
gonna have to,
kind of
right.
why it's been sort of dictated there in those kind of places. But you're seeing it, we're seeing it in other places as well. Public rec, parks and recreation, schools, churches. It's really starting to spread. And what's interesting is this is really common in the UK and Australia, where they actually have changing rooms, changing spaces, changing rooms that are equipped, sort of to accommodate the situation. And in the US is fairly new. In North America, it's fairly new, but
Yeah.
it's starting to take shape. So, like I said, it's a similar story to baby changing stations 30, 40 years ago, and now we're
Sure.
seeing it. And I think it's just going to continue to, kind of take off. And, I'm glad you asked about it because I certainly think it's good that the awareness is spreading and that more of these accommodations are out there.
Yeah, and you're totally right where you can envision it in 30, 40 years from now or whatever, where there'll be like particularly when you said airport, like particularly airports, right? Like, because if you're wheelchair bound, you need that assistance at the gate and whatnot. But it's like, yeah, you could see that just becoming they're going to become more and more commonplace. Like you can just already see that happening.
Yeah,
Um, well, hey, I'm trying to be cognizant of your time here. And once again, I'm speaking with Romany Sam Haxon, the president of Koala Care. Um, I'll ask you one more and then let you be on your way if you're okay with that.
sure thing.
Well, you mentioned that the adult changing station kind of got me thinking like what other new products has does Koala have coming up or has launched in recent years that our listeners maybe not be aware of because I would guess a lot of people aren't aware of the adult one um,
Yep.
and kind of what separates you guys. What do you think makes Koala Care products worth the worthy investment for somebody who's tasked with overseeing a facility or a building owner?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Adult changing stations, like I said, I forgot to also mention the other place you'll see them is, stadiums,
Yeah, yeah,
where and that's less, I think it's less driven by legislation. That's driven more by fan experience, right? You want the whole family to enjoy that. And so that we're certainly excited about that. That's done very well. And we've had some additions to our product line. So even within the changing station family, things like different colors and finishes. You wouldn't believe, but the stainless steel and the matte black powder coated finishes that's really taken off. I mean, primarily because there's just a higher standard of sort of like finishes on all restroom accessories to include baby changing stations. So whether it's a soap dispenser, grab bar, towel waste unit, we've got products that coordinate across all color finishes. Kind of, you think about what's kind of the trend in flight to quality and hospitality in a lot of
yeah,
places where the
yeah,
the quality of the amenities has gone up. So we've had products obviously want to fit that. They don't want to see the plastic. They want to see something a little
yeah,
nicer.
yeah,
We have baby changing stations with the stainless steel veneer, still with the Koala logo kind of etched into it.
sure.
So those are some kind of smaller things that we've done lately. And then beyond that, like high chairs, child protection seat. So child protection seat, if people don't know, a lot of times a mother or a father could not only have a toddler or a baby with them but also a toddler, right? And it's like, what do you do with a toddler? You don't want them running around or like trying to jump on or grab the baby change station while the baby's on it and all this stuff. So the child protection seat is wall mounted, and it's actually, you could put them on the seat and it has a belt, and you get to like leave them there safely while you get to change the baby. And
Hmm.
so they don't become a
Hmm.
distraction. That's just an example of like thinking
Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
sort of what do parents need? What do families need? And I think, ultimately to your last question, that's really what makes us different when you think about between us and the competition. It's not only do you know the brand, parents know the brand. It's funny, like my career, I've started at Bobrick, and it's the bigger company out of Bobrick and Koala Care, but more people know Koala Care because Bobrick's really,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
logo is like
Sure.
really kind of
Sure.
little etched into like the stainless steel. Koala Care, everyone knows the Koala Care logo, and it's very recognized. So there's a trust with that, but I think more than that, it's less about products for us, and it's more thinking about the experience and the needs of everyone in the value chain, right? From the patrons, the people that use the products, the families, the caregivers, the parents, the babies, the toddlers, going to the building owners, the facility managers, the
Yeah.
architects that have to design these
Right.
spaces and think about all these things. We spend a lot of time, and so when you think about our products, it's obviously we started with baby changing stations, but it's developed into way more than that. It's about really accommodating the family kind of through the ages of not just the baby, but as they grow as well. And so you kind of seen that in our product evolution and what we've launched over the years. And at the end of the day, I think it's just really helping public spaces becoming more welcoming, more inclusive, and easier to maintain. And if we can do that, then that's our way of contributing to society and a better place to live for everybody.
For sure. Yeah. Great way to end. Great way to wrap it up. For sure. So we will end on that. I'll
Absolutely.
stay true to that. So, Romany, thanks so much for your time. Again, this was another FacilitiesNet podcast with our guest today, Romany Samhaxon, the president of Koala Care. Make sure to check him out at koalacare.com. That's care with a K. Um, Thanks again. Really appreciate talking with you. There's some great information for our crowd. Obviously, it
Yeah.
resonated with me. Anybody, no matter
Thanks
what
for having
industry
me.
you're in, if you've raised kids or have little ones right now, are raising them, Koala Care is definitely a product you rely on.
Absolutely.
So
Well, yeah, Todd, thanks for having me. I certainly enjoyed the conversation as well, and I hope your listeners got something out of it as well. So thank you, and yeah, appreciate your time.
yeah, thanks again. We'll see you.